Online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. On February 24th, President Trump will deliver his State of the Union address to Congress, and AM 560 The Answer is throwing a viewing party. Tickets are on sale now at 560theanswer.com/party.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and a couple of updates on matters Minnesota. One, Don Lemon and the agitators who trespassed into that church in St. Paul, City's Church, violated the exercise of religion rights of the congregants of City's Church. A shoe has dropped in the Don Lemon prosecution specifically. This from Jan Jeffcoat. You may remember Jan Jeffcoat. She was at Fox Chicago for a while. She now sits on the national news desk, which is a headline news service of Sinclair Media. Apparently, the G has somebody to corroborate their claims against Don Lemon that he was not there as a journo, as he heroically presents himself. He was there as part of the underlying illicit effort, and a Temple student gave the feds the drop on Don Lemon.
A Temple University student has now surrendered on federal charges, admitting he helped Don Lemon with logistics and local contacts ahead of that anti-ICE protest. Jerome Richardson, a political science senior, turned himself in and is accused of conspiring to interfere with religious worship. Court records and social media posts show Richardson describing himself as assisting Don Lemon in the days leading up to the protest. Lemon, who claims he was just reporting, was arrested last week and released, but prosecutors say this new arrest undercuts that defense, suggesting planning and not just passive coverage.
Oh, boy. Well, I'm sure in certain circles, even if he ultimately is convicted of a felony, he'll still be a cause celeb, but that's just the nature of where things are at. But in terms of the underlying substance, the additional update is about benefits fraud, which has somewhat been muted in the shuffle here in the last couple of weeks. And particularly as it pertains to Minnesota, since when it comes to benefits fraud at the particularly with combined state and federal programs like Medicaid, it's going to be on the federal government or federal prosecutors at the state level to make these cases, because we know the disposition of sanctuary cities and states about frauding the taxpayer. This is going to, these sorts of stories are important because it puts pressure on the federal government to either make a case, federal prosecutors, U.S. Attorney in Minnesota, to either make a case or explain why they cannot make a case. The Office of Legislative Auditor, Judy Randall, who's been in that gig for almost 3 decades, on not just the benefits fraud, which has been well documented by actual citizen journalists, as distinguished from Don Lemon, but also Judy Randall, the auditor and the Office of Legislative Auditor, on the cover-up by state employees after the fraud was discovered to, essentially paper the file after the fact to cover up, in an attempt, a feeble attempt it would appear, to cover up the fraud. So, I mean, if the auditor has the drop on state employees and these fraudulent schemes, I don't know how it evades the grasp of prosecutors, but, give them time to make the case. This all is just broken in the last few weeks, and although it's been reported on for a decade, but new prosecutors, Trump-appointed U.S. attorneys, will give them time to make the case, but need to pay attention to this.
This was definitely the most egregious thing I have seen, maybe in my whole time working at OLA.
Office of the Legislative Auditor released a damning report finding state employees fabricating records to cover up mismanagement of money, tax money. It's another black eye for the State Department of Human Services.
27 years with the Office of the Legislative Auditor, a statement like that from Judy Randall means something. After past suspicions, she says her most recent audit proved state workers were fabricating documents to cover up mismanagement of taxpayer money.
So these documents should exist. They didn't. We asked for them. All of a sudden, they now exist. And in at least one case, it was created wholesale and backdated by 2 years to give the impression that it had always been there and been done on time.
The OLA audited the Behavioral Health Administration within the Department of Human Services, which issues grants, nearly $200 million of taxpayer money each year, to addiction and mental health service providers. But the audit found BHA was not making sure those providers were doing the work.
BHA didn't conduct the site visits. Our auditors went and conducted the site visits that BHA should have done, and we identified serious concerns that services weren't being provided.
One of the grants examined by OLA was $1.6 million issued to the Wellness Collaborative through Zion Baptist Church in North Minneapolis. According to the OLA report, BHA didn't have documentation to give auditors to show that the services were rendered. What's more, the audit says the grant manager directly profited by leaving BHA and months later providing consulting services to the Wellness Collaborative for the grant she managed, which Randall says is not illegal.
But I think it raises a bunch of ethical questions at the very least.
Representatives at Zion strongly dispute what BHA and DHS told the auditors. They tell KARE 11 DHS sought them out for the grant. They provided services which DHS workers witnessed. They gave DHS documentation, and they say now they believe they're being scapegoated. The former grant manager told KARE 11 any wrongdoing falls squarely on DHS.
Conduct a monitoring visit to make sure the services are actually being provided. These aren't rocket science types of things.
Perhaps most frustrating, this was the second audit of the Behavioral Health Administration, and many of the problems found were repeat problems.
What is it like to see these problems, make these recommendations, and nothing is done to fix it?
It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
You know, if I'm one of those grant recipients, I mean, I just use the Somali home health care excuse. Somebody broke in and stole all that documentation. They didn't take anything else. They just stole all that documentation to substantiate that we provided services consistent with the grant monies we were given. That seems to work for now. Ken Cuccinelli is the national chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative, former Virginia Attorney General and former Deputy Secretary at DHS. Ken, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Dan.
I know we want to get to say-back business, but particularly since you were a former state attorney general as well as deputy at DHS, these issues that we've been discussing are sort of center cut for you as well, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So one of the main things I did as attorney general is Medicaid fraud in particular, and we broke records, got an award from the Obama administration after I left. They couldn't give it to us while I was there, of course, for how much fraud money we recovered. And one thing to keep in mind is we can debate how much money should be set aside for these programs for the poor, but they are programs for the poor. And these people weren't just stealing from taxpayers. This is the pot we set aside to help poor people. Mm-hmm. So that anybody would ever have any sympathy on any basis for any of these people should be brushed aside with that. And it does seem that in at least in Minnesota. Too. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. All of the people who actually need it the most. You know, I talk a lot about balanced budget requirement because we're getting so deep in the hole. When that government funding crashes, what's going to go away is those social services, at least for some period of time, and we can preserve them for the people who need them the most by being, frankly, frugal about how we spend that money, which we're not, obviously, or we can wait for the crash. And this just accelerates the crash, we're lighting money on fire here, and in some reports we're actually funneling it to terrorists in Africa. So, that's a lovely thought to start your week with, right?
Yeah, well, right. I mean, with the Al-Shabaab reports, right? I mean, but through Abu Dhabi too, we got all kinds of complications here. But I mean, this really puts pressure, and it should, on the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, and U.S. attorneys across the fruited plains to make out cases where attorneys general like Keith Ellison are not going to make the cases.
Right, and the state AGs, this is some of the most spectacular opportunity to do prosecution. And obviously, a lot of them are not only not doing it, we've seen Keith Ellison is sort of helping cover it up in passive terms, at least. And so, as you said, the only people left in a state like Minnesota are the federal officials to go in and make these cases. So it sounds like, though, in Minnesota, you could have a whole pile of whistleblowers to help you make these cases. And I don't imagine that frankly, is any different than will probably start turning up in other states.
Well, yeah, certainly. Let's hope in Illinois. We know. I mean, any of these states. I mean, it's like the CDL licenses. Any state, generally speaking, all these states should be under that sort of rolling scrutiny. Every government should be. But we know in these sanctuary states, with a government oriented towards extending dependency to as many people within their purview as they can, that this is going on. California, Illinois, Minnesota, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, all the usual suspects.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And this is also accountability that's long overdue. America, you want to elect these kinds of radical Democrats. This is part of what you get. I mean, Virginia, we're getting Californicated. You guys have been in this situation for a while, but we're getting it all at once with the new radical Democrat legislature. And I say it that way because when I was in the state legislature 20 years ago, we had what we thought were crazy liberals. Well, those crazy liberals are being primaried out by communists who think they're too conservative. And now they have control in Virginia, and we're getting things like early release of violent felons. They're not making any pretense about it. If you serve 10, 15, 20, 25 years, you can go back in to ask the judge to let you go now. And, of course, they're also now going to be in charge of picking judges. So guess what kind of judges are going to be there? No pretense at all about this. I mean, we're seeing this at high speed in Virginia. And these are the kinds of folks that the Keith Ellison variety that help criminals as opposed to prosecute criminals and hold them accountable.
Speaking at least in part about Somalians, it looks like Somalia is doing a better job with election integrity than states like Minnesota or Illinois. Listen to this.
Somalia's electoral authorities have started issuing voter ID cards across Mogadishu as the capital prepares for its first direct municipal council elections in decades under a one-person, one-vote system. Printing at the Somali Independent Election Committee headquarters operates around the clock in 2 8-hour shifts, producing an estimated 30,000 to 40,000 cards daily.
So we're going to have one man or one person, one vote, and voter IDs in a Somali election. But Chuck Schumer will be damned if we're going to institute Jim Crow 2.0 here, Ken.
Oh, my gosh. Well, maybe we could make a deal and they could have Chuck Schumer and for free. We'll just take a 7th round draft choice, Maybe get Caleb Williams a backup lineman. I don't know. But that's amazing, isn't it? I mean, you can't in real life, it's so funny how much crazier than anything we could conceive of. If you and I had said that, like on the air, the other side would go berserk. And here it is in real life. But the truth is, virtually every other country in the world that tries to run real elections, we know there are some that don't try to do that, but the ones that try to run real elections require voter IDs. They also don't allow much mail-in voting. What do? We do no voter IDs in many states, and tons of mail-in voting, which even Jimmy Carter said was the most insecure form of voting. May he rest in peace.
And their cover story for their opposition to voter ID and the SAVE Act, despite the fact 71% of their party faithful support it, run something like what Adam Schiff provided over the weekend. And, Schumer's doing the same thing. It's a combination of it's racist, Jim Crow 2.0, which is actually racist because you're saying, black people can't get voter IDs or
Correct.
can't get government IDs, which is absurd.
Too stupid. Right.
But and then also it's, Trump is going to steal an election.
What does he mean? What do you think he means when he says nationalize the elections, or specifically that Republicans should take control of the voting?
I think if he intends to try to subvert the elections, he will do everything he can to suppress the vote. And if he loses the vote, and I think the Republicans now expect they'll get a real drubbing in the midterms, he's prepared to try to take some kind of action to overturn the result. And we really shouldn't question that. We saw him try to the point of insurrection to overturn the 2020 election. We see him now taking these extraordinary steps with an election now 5 years ago. He's basically telling us he intends to interfere in this upcoming election.
I appreciate Adam Schiff's restraint in not saying he's colluding with Putin to fix the 2026 election. I thought that was very nice on his part.
Yeah, once he kept saying it even after it was rather obviously untrue. And at some point, the truth does have enough force and power to even slow down Adam Schiff, which is really saying something about the power of truth. But hey, I have an idea, Adam. Why don't we make it hard for anybody to steal an election? Make it easy to vote, hard to cheat, including making people prove who they are so we know they're on the voter rolls. And if he wants to aim that at President Trump and his supporters, we're happy to have that aimed at us.
Is eliminating the so-called zombie filibuster and forcing the Dems to talk in order to prevent the cloture and prevent this legislation from getting a vote in the Senate, is that going to be enough to get it out of the Senate into the president's desk?
Well, it would be the first time in my memory that they have even put that level of effort in. And the fact that we're hearing that kind of discussion among Senate Republicans is pretty encouraging. The SAVE Act came out of the House on a bipartisan basis. It was only 4 Democrats, but it was, this reflects the polling, as you just noted. And I know you picked the number from the CNN survey. It's not like CNN is going to bias things in our favor.
Right.
And they found that everybody, no matter how you divide it up, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Vegetarian, black, white, green, brown, every single one of those groups, by overwhelming majorities, favors utilizing voter identification to help secure elections, except elected Democrats. And why would that be? Why would that be? And if they don't want us all to suspect that they're okay with cheating, then maybe they should help make it hard to cheat.
Ken Cuccinelli, National Chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative, former Virginia AG and former Deputy Secretary of DHS as well. Ken, thank you as always.
Good to be with you, Dan. Have a great day.
You too. And Ken Cuccinelli joined us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Safety. It's so important at your industrial facility. You need to keep your personnel safe and meet OSHA requirements. One problem with your ladders, platforms, or safety guards, and you could be facing costly fines.